Howdy, Ags. You're listening to On Air with Student Affairs, and I'm your host, Morgan Miles. This podcast is designed to show you all the ways you can create your own Aggie experience and get involved here on campus. Today, we are back with part 2 of our first episode with General Ramirez. So, General Ramirez, you were a student here, which is pretty cool to probably be working here after going here for college. So, what were you involved in as a student?
Well, yeah, boy, it's hard to remember sometimes that I was a student here way back when. I'm class of 1979. I was the first member of my family ever to go to college. And I came to A&M primarily for one reason. That's because I wanted to be a member of the Aggie Band. Mm-hmm. I had seen the Aggie Band when the Corps marched into downtown Houston. I grew up in Houston. And I'd seen this organization come marching by, and I saw the band, and I said, boy, I want to be a part of that. I didn't know anything about the band. I didn't know anything about the Corps. I didn't know anything about A&M. In fact, I didn't even know where A&M was. But, you know, I came to A&M with one specific purpose in mind, and that was to be in the Aggie Band. So I joined as a freshman, not being fully prepared for the rigor that came with being a member of the Corps of Cadets and the Aggie Band. Very, very demanding time-wise, demanding physically, and even emotionally. I mean, it was difficult making that transition from high school to college, and then throw in the Corps Cadets and all the demands that come with that. Very, very difficult for me. But I will tell you, I loved being a member of the Aggie Band. And there were times my freshman year where I really wanted to quit. And it wasn't because I didn't love being in the band. It was because it was challenging. It was demanding. Balancing academics and the Corps and all that came with that was challenging for me. And at the time, I wasn't sure I could handle it.
Right.
But the Corps Cadets and the band showed me that I could push myself beyond limits I'd never pushed myself to before.
Wow.
And so that was the first organization I joined. I joined the Aggie Band, and again, loved my experience in the Aggie Band and wouldn't trade that experience for anything in the world. Mm-hmm. The second semester of my freshman year at A&M, the Aggie Band commander called all the freshmen in and said, every one of you must join an organization off the quad.
Wow.
So he said, and you've all got to come back and tell me what organization you joined. Mm-hmm. So I went out in search of, okay, what organization am I going to join? And I joined two. I joined MSC Opus, and I joined MSC Town Hall. And I only joined them for one reason, and that's because I knew a lot of girls in both of those organizations. And so I thought, well, there's girls. I know some of them. They're very nice-looking young ladies. So I joined, not really understanding or realizing just what an impact those two organizations would have on me, because I stayed in those organizations my entire time at A&M. I learned a lot from that. That was the first time, for example, that I had ever been to an opera or the symphony or the ballet. I had never, ever in my life seen any of that till I became a member of MSC Opus. I went to a concert almost every Friday night.
Wow.
Of a home football game through MSC Town Hall. I got a chance to work backstage, out in the crowd, help setting up the stage. I mean, it gave me an opportunity to experience things different than the Corps.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I was having a great experience in the Corps, but I also got a chance to learn a lot about other aspects of being a Texas Aggie, and I met different people who weren't in the Corps, and we became very, very close friends as a result of my joining those organizations. So those were probably the first three organizations that I became a member of, and the good thing was I joined them my freshman year, and I was a member of all of them my entire 4 years at A&M.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like you were extremely busy.
I was, but I loved every minute. I was young. I was energetic.
Yeah.
Of course, my freshman year, my grades suffered as a result, but I learned pretty quickly how to reorient my thinking and my time management that allowed me to make my grades. My grades got progressively better. I'll put it to you like that.
Right. So we know you were in the Corps. So did you always want to join the military, or was that something that just kind of happened?
Yeah, no, I had no intention. My father was a 22-year veteran of the Army. Mm-hmm. He had served in Korea, was shot 5 times, spent 33 months as a prisoner of war. So, and I didn't know a whole lot about that till I came to A&M. and I was a grown man. And that's when my father started to open up to me about his experiences, especially in Korea and the war and being a prisoner of war for almost 3 years. But I did not come with the intent of joining the military. Like as I mentioned in my previous podcast, I wanted to be a physical therapist. That was my goal. And so I came to A&M. I was a physical education major because A&M did not have a PT program. But there were many that came, got a physical education degree, and then took that and applied to PT school. So that was what I was going to do. But while I was in the Corps, you had to join an ROTC your first 2 years at A&M. So my first year, I joined the Navy ROTC program, and quite frankly, just didn't really like it. It wasn't something that grabbed me. So at the end of my freshman year, I transitioned to the Army ROTC program. And I liked that. It was a lot of fun. I made good friends, and it was more along the lines of kind of what I liked. So I got immersed in that program. And at the end of my sophomore year, in fact, I had just finished my last final and was getting ready to go home when I got a call from the commandant's office saying the commandant needs to see you. And of course, your first thought when you're a cadet is, oh my God, what have I done? I'm in trouble and I've done something. And I told them, I said, well, my car's all loaded up. I don't have any uniforms with me. I'm in civilian clothes. And she said, no, it won't take long. Come as you are. But he needs to talk to you real quick. So that was a long walk from Dorm 11, where I lived, over near Duncan Dining Hall, all the way to the Trigon, where the commandant's office was. Thinking over in my mind, what have I done? I was trying to think of, could it have been this? Could it have been that? And I got there and I walked into his office, and he said, hey, we've got great news. We've got an Army ROTC 2-year scholarship, and we'd like to offer it to you.
Wow.
Would you be interested? And of course, my first question was, well, what does it pay? And he said, well, it covers everything. Tuition, books, fees, covers everything except room and board. It even buys your supplies, all your books, all your supplies. It pays for all of that. And you get $100 a month as a stipend. And at the time, again, I was the first member of my family to go to college. I needed the money. My family was working hard to put me through school. It was expensive. And my parents were willing to pay whatever price it took to get me to go to college and graduate. So I said, okay, I'll do it. It's going to save my family some money, take a little bit of the burden off my parents, so I'll sign. And it was that time that the commandant said, okay, but just a reminder, when you sign on the dotted line, you owe the Army 4 years of active duty. So when you graduate, you'll commission, you'll go into the Army, and you owe the Army 4 years of active duty. So I said, okay, I can do that. I'll do that. And so sign me up. So at age 20, I signed on the dotted line, signing up for an Army ROTC 2-year scholarship with a commitment of 4 years of active duty when I graduated, not realizing at the time that decision that day changed my entire life forever.
Wow.
Because I graduated. In the morning, I commissioned that afternoon, and I went off to Fort Sill, Oklahoma as an artillery officer that evening.
Wow.
So all in the same day, graduated in the morning, commissioned that afternoon, flew up for Fort Sill, Oklahoma that evening, and I was in the Army. I was a brand new second lieutenant in the United States Army, thinking that I would stay for 4 years. And as I mentioned in my previous podcast, I stayed for 31 years, achieving the rank of general officer, which is something I never, ever in my wildest dreams would have thought.
Right.
But that was my path to the military, and it was not a path that I had planned on. But I remind college students every day that opportunities are going to present themselves to you at times when you least expect it.
Right.
And it's going to be up to you to decide, do I take advantage of this opportunity? Is it the right opportunity for me at this time in my life, or do I wait for another opportunity to come along? I took that opportunity mainly because I wanted to save my family some money, and it changed the entire direction of my life in a very, very good way. I mean, I am grateful that I signed that day because it changed my life in a very big way, but in a very positive way as well.
Wow, that's an awesome story.
Yeah.
Wow. So what would you say your favorite memory is from being a student here, or even being in the Corps, the band, anything? And what did it teach you?
Yeah, I will tell you, the one thing that truly, my freshman year, which I think if you asked anybody that's gone through the Corps and graduated and gone on to become a former student, I don't think there's a person out there that will tell you they didn't think about quitting at least once while they were a freshman. Because your freshman year is tough. Yeah. It's a tough year. And my freshman year was no different. It was tough. And there were many times when I thought about quitting. I thought, this isn't for me. I'm not sure I can handle this. I'm not sure I can deal with this. But one thing that kept me going every week was the fact that I got to march on Kyle Field with the Aggie Band in front of 70 to 80,000 fans, which is how big Kyle Field was at the time. And I had never had that kind of experience in my life.
Right.
And to this day, I still get chills thinking about my first time marching on Kyle Field as a brand new freshman, marching with the Aggie Band, these elaborate, intricate drills, and hearing the crowd and the whoops from all the people up there, and thinking, wow, I made it. I'm here. And this is the experience that I was hoping that I would get. And we did that every weekend. Every weekend we would march. And so that kept me in. So I won't say it's one of my favorite memories is marching on Kyle Field or marching even at away fields with the Aggie Band and being a part of that experience with some of the finest at the time men, because it was all male at the time.
Right.
Some of the finest men that I've ever met in my life, who many of whom are still, friends of mine to this day. That's still one of my favorite memories.
Wow. That's incredible. That's awesome to think that you were in the Aggie Band, because it's so cool, experience. Like just being able to watch it as a student. But I can't imagine being down there, being in the band.
Yeah, I take great pride in watching the band to this day. And I mean, as commandant, every week I'd go to rehearsal, and as the vice president of student affairs, I try to get there every Friday morning to watch, their rehearsal on Friday morning before a home football game on Saturday. And Dr. Tim Ray, who's the director, gives me an opportunity to address the band. And I always enjoy that because I take great pride in watching the band today, because they are, in my humble opinion, head and shoulders better than we ever were back in the day. Their drills are so much harder, and they play better. I give them a lot of kudos because I think they're a far better band today than we were back in the day.
That's awesome. How did your time on campus as a student prepare you for your career?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing about being a Texas Aggie and my time here as a student was, number one, I had to learn how to remember names. So when I met somebody and I shook their hand and I introduced myself to them, I learned firm handshake, look them in the eye, tell them your name, and then learn their name, learn who they are. And it was amazing how in the military, people would always remark, you remember names better than anybody I've ever met. You remember people. And I said, I learned that at A&M. First off, you said howdy to them. You shook their hand. You gave them a good firm handshake. You looked them in the eye. And then you told them your name, but you also remembered their name. And that's something unique to Texas A&M is, we take great pride in how we introduce ourselves to others. We say howdy. We're friendly. And I think being a people person helps you in any career field out there, quite frankly. But for me, being in the military, it helped me a lot because I was working with people every day. And then the further on I went in my career, I was working with people in both peacetime and in wartime. And having that ability to connect with your soldiers, with your non-commissioned officers, with your officers, goes a long way, especially when you're dealing with some very difficult situations. Right. So that's just one small aspect of what I took away from being a Texas Aggie. There were many, but that's one that I think jumps to the front of the pile, and the fact that, I got a chance to learn a lot about what it meant to meet people and truly meet them in a way that makes you remember who they are, and allows you to remember their name, if nothing else.
Yes. So what do you think makes A&M so special?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of things that make A&M special. It's a friendly campus. It still has a small campus feel to it, despite the size to it. I think our students are head and shoulders above what you're going to find on other college campuses, and that's a totally unbiased opinion, by the way. But I also think that, there's something special about being an Aggie and going through the experience here and living the traditions that we live that are unique and iconic to Texas A&M University. There's no other school in the world that has a Silver Taps.
Yeah.
There's no other school in the world that does Aggie muster.
Yeah.
There's no other school in the world that has the 12th man the way we do.
Right.
There's other schools that may think they do, but they don't. I mean, we have, over 30,000 students at every home football game standing for their team, carrying on that tradition of we're ready to go in for you if you need us.
Yeah.
We're here to yell for you and help make you successful no matter what. Midnight yell practice. There's no other school that does that has 30, 40, 50,000 fans in the stands at midnight before a home football game, regardless of the time of kickoff, because they want to be there to show their undying love and spirit for Texas A&M. I think those kinds of things make A&M very unique and set us apart from others. And I will also tell you our core values and instilling that in our students from the time they first come here, starting at fish camp and all the way through to the time they graduate. I think those set us apart as well and make us unique as individuals, as Texas Aggies, and that, when we leave here, people know when you come out of here and you go out there looking for a job wearing that Aggie ring, people know what they're getting. Now, they know they're getting something special with that person that they hire. So I think there's a lot of special things about A&M, but boy, those are certainly very important to me.
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit more about Silver Taps and muster, and why is that so special to you, and how does that make A&M special?
Yeah. It's hard to explain Silver Taps and Aggie muster to those who have not experienced
Absolutely.
it. You have to go to one. And, when I was a student here, I went to every single one. I mean, the Corps went to every single one. And we may not have known the student, but we were there. We were there representing as Texas Aggies, showing that, hey, we're here for you. You will never be forgotten because we're here standing for you, the way that students still do to this day.
Yeah.
And I go to Silver Taps a lot, even now as I did it as a commandant. I've done it now as the vice president, and it's still very, very special to be there. And I think it takes on more significance now for me, as not just as the vice president, but as a father.
Yeah.
As a father, to stand there and listen to families cry,
Yeah.
Over the loss of their son or daughter, to hear other students crying because they've lost a friend, a fellow Aggie. And as a dad, I got to tell you, it carries a lot more significance for me now than I think it ever did when I was a student here. And I always took great pride in going to Silver Taps because it had special meaning for me. And Aggie muster, I got to tell you, I've held Aggie muster all over the world. It didn't matter in both peacetime and wartime. I've held Aggie muster with one other Aggie in the Al Anbar province of Western Iraq on April 21st because, that's who we are. That's what we do. And it's hard to explain to people, but I tell them, find another school on the planet where all of its former students and current students gather together on the same day every year, no matter where they are in the world, to honor fellow Aggies who have died during the year. Name another school that does that. It doesn't exist. And for me, I always took great pride in if I was in Europe, if I was in Asia, if I was in the Middle East, if I was in the United States, if I was in the Central Asian states, if there was an Aggie muster being conducted near me, I went.
Yeah.
I took great pride in that because for me, it brought me back to my roots here at Texas A&M University. It reminded me that no matter how busy I am in my daily life with family and work and, fighting a war, whatever it may be, it reminded me that, oh, by the way, it all began for you at Texas A&M University. And you wear that ring with pride. And it brought me back to center, if you will, of what it meant to be a Texas Aggie. So that's why those two are very, very special to me.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about what was that like standing there as a student, or I guess as a member of the Corps, you were required to go. So what was that like?
Yeah, no, and it was interesting. You know, I still remember going the first time and not knowing. I mean, back then we put our blankets over our windows so we could block out any light. All the lights were off on campus, and we would walk over. There was no marching. There was nothing formal. We all just walked over together, and you stood there. And I got to tell you, it's a very emotional experience the first time you go through it, especially when you hear, you know, the Ross Volunteers fire that 21-gun salute, and then you hear Silver Taps for the first time. And that was the first time I'd ever heard Silver Taps played the way that only we play it. And I got to tell you, that's just an emotional experience every time you hear it. And to this day, I still get emotional. I speak at Aggie Muster every year, and I've spoken all over the United States. And when they play that Silver Taps, it's still hard for me not to get teary-eyed, you know, thinking about, because now when I answer here, I'm answering here for classmates.
Yeah.
I'm answering here for friends that I went to A&M with, you know, and that carries extra meaning and extra significance for me. And in some cases, very, 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 very emotional for me to do that, to have to answer here for someone that you remember back when you were 18, 19 years old and you had your whole lives ahead of you and you were invincible. And now they're gone. Yeah. And so each year it gets harder and harder for me. But again, I'm grateful that we as Texas Aggies still observe those traditions. They're iconic to us. They're unique to us. And they help define who we are. And while others may not understand it, I'm grateful that we do.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we still observe it no matter where we are in the world.
Yeah. I will say it is a very beautiful experience to go through, having gone through it. And I would recommend any freshman or anybody that's never gone to go just once, just to experience it. It's really a beautiful thing to experience here at A&M. So what would be some of your advice you would maybe give to a freshman or even a transfer student, somebody just new to campus?
The first thing I tell them is, get involved. Go out there and find your tribe. You know, go out there and find something that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, that you want to be a part of. And like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's athletic, political, religious, social. Just go out there and find something that stirs your passion and become a part of it. Make that an integral part of your overall A&M experience while you're here, because you'll be grateful you did. And again, whether it's the Corps of Cadets, a fraternity, sorority, student government, a rec sports, club sports team, the baking club, the parachute club, the diving club, you know, or the Young Democrats of A&M. Find your tribe and become a part of it. Get involved and be a part of something outside of the classroom that truly stirs your passions and that adds to that overall experience that we want you to have at A&M, because I guarantee you'll be glad you did.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking again on a separate podcast episode. We enjoyed hearing you speak. And
well, thank you. It's my honor.
To your experience.
It's my honor to do this. And again, it's also, I do so with great pride because I'm proud to be an Aggie. You know, I am proud to be an Aggie. Usually when people say, well, tell us who you are. So, well, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a grandfather, and I'm a Texas Aggie, and I'm a soldier. You know, that's normally how I define, because being a Texas Aggie truly helped define who I am. And for me, a lot of what has occurred to me in my life, in my professional life, began right here at Texas A&M University. Right. I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for Texas A&M and the experience I had here. So any chance I have to give back and help out today's students, I'm in. Just call on me and I'm there.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on. And thank you to everybody who's listening or watching. You can keep up with us on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, or wherever you watch your podcasts. You can also check out the Division of Student Affairs at tex.app/create your Aggie experience. Thanks and gig 'em.